Our journey is towards the stars and the sea. The Fujian aircraft carrier has successfully catapulted 3 types of carrier-based aircraft. So today we are going to talk about this catapult operation of the Fujian. Today, I have watched the electromagnetic catapult systems of 2 aircraft carriers, China's Fujian and the US Ford, many times to find out the differences in their catapult operations. First of all, let's take a look at the Fujian. In this electromagnetic catapult operation, it mainly catapulted the J-15, J-35, and KJ-600. However, it can be seen from this catapult that these 3 types of aircraft are still prototype models, not the ones officially delivered to the military. The date of this catapult operation was approximately the 19th of March 2025, so we can see that in this catapult, especially for the J-35 and J-15, the J-15 had no external weapons mounted. In fact, when the Liaoning aircraft carrier was commissioned in those years, the earliest tests of the J-15 ski jump takeoff and landing were also conducted with the aircraft empty. It was only after a period of time that the J-15 conducted ski jump takeoff and landing with weapons carried. Now, since the catapult operation was conducted on March 19 this year, and the Fujian has actually conducted several more sea trials afterwards, it is possible that takeoff and landing tests under loaded conditions will be carried out later. Because modern aerial ammunition is becoming more and more expensive, if such expensive ammunition is not launched during combat, the carrier-based aircraft must carry it back to the deck when landing. First, let's look at the carrier-based aircraft takeoff of the Fujian and the US Ford aircraft carrier. Here we can see that the wing, folding, and unfolding methods of the KJ-600 and the US E-2D are very similar. Many people said that the electronic board held by the person we just saw was for weighing. However, after checking relevant information online later, it was found that the board is actually not for weighing, but for measuring wind speed. Now let's continue. So here we can see that when the US F-18 is being catapulted, the way its position limiting rod works is basically the same as that of the J-35. We can see this in the next part. In fact, this board is not for showing weight. It is for showing the deck wind. Although we can see so-called figures like 32 tons or even 35 tons during this shipboard operation, in reality, it is impossible for these 3 types of carrier-based aircraft to reach such weights. Because this is supposed to be the first deck catapult test during this sea trial, for the sake of safety, the main purpose is to test the reliability of the catapult. In this case, the aircraft will generally not take off at their maximum takeoff weight. Whether it is the J-35, J-15, or KJ-600, their actual maximum takeoff weight will not exceed 35 tons. Especially for the J-35 and J-15, if they have no external ammunition mounted, even with full internal fuel, their maximum takeoff weight will not exceed 30 tons. Therefore, after checking with ChatGPT, it can be basically determined that this board is not for showing weight, but for testing the deck wind. In fact, in the video released this time, both the J-15 and J-35 were in 2 different states when being catapulted for takeoff. We can watch the video later, and it can be clearly seen in this screenshot. In one state, when the J-15 was at the end of the catapult process, its front landing gear had not yet left the deck. In the other state of another J-15, its front landing gear had already left the deck, even though the aircraft itself had not yet left the deck. The J-35 is in a similar situation. In the J-35 image at the bottom left corner, it is obvious that when the aircraft reached the end of the deck, its front landing gear had not left the main deck either. In the J-35 image at the top right corner, the aircraft's front landing gear had left the deck, even though the aircraft had not yet left the deck. Let's watch the video. I'll play it for everyone. You can see clearly that this J-35 slid for a certain distance before taking off, and its landing gear had already left the deck. This J-15 is also the same. Its front landing gear had left the deck even though the aircraft had not yet left the deck. And it can also be clearly seen that for this J-15, when the aircraft left the deck, its front landing gear had not yet left the deck. In fact, this is to test different states of the electromagnetic catapult. Compared with the steam catapult, the biggest advantage of the electromagnetic catapult is that its overall power is adjustable. When a carrier-based aircraft takes off, its takeoff state is actually different under different load conditions. Since this is the first time to test the electromagnetic catapult at sea, everything is for the sake of safety. In fact, regarding the maximum takeoff weight, there is no need to actually mount ammunition. Counterweight models can be used instead. In fact, by reducing the power of the electromagnetic catapult, we can simulate the conditions of the carrier-based aircraft after leaving the deck, including both light load and heavy load conditions. Of course, for aircraft like the KJ-600, there is no need to test these two conditions because the KJ-600 basically takes off with full fuel for early warning missions. Coincidentally, many people were discussing in the group today whether the Ford-class aircraft carrier cannot catapult the F-35. It is a fact that the Ford class has not yet catapulted the F-35 so far, but this does not mean that the U.S. electromagnetic catapult cannot catapult the F-35. The U.S. has conducted electromagnetic catapult tests on the F-35 as early as 2011. Let's watch this video. It's about 16 seconds long, and the clips I took are not too long. Here you can see that there is no major problem for the U.S. electromagnetic catapult to catapult the F-35. However, the key issue is that when the U.S. was building the Ford class, the entire project suffered severe delays, and the U.S. F-35 project also experienced significant delays. These project delays in the U.S. have led to cost overruns for these projects. Therefore, in order to put the Ford class into service as soon as possible at that time, the U.S. did not complete the supporting facilities for the F-35 to be deployed on the ship. Whether a fighter jet can be deployed on an aircraft carrier depends not only on whether the aircraft can be successfully catapulted, but also crucially on whether the aircraft carrier has the capability to support the carrier-based aircraft. After all, the F-35 is a fifth-generation aircraft, and its maintenance requirements are quite different from those of the F-18. Therefore, even up to now, there are only 3 U.S. aircraft carriers that can carry the F-35. Only these 3 have undergone modifications to deploy the F-35. The other U.S. aircraft carriers have not undergone such modifications and thus cannot deploy the F-35. Now, it seems that we are basically ahead of the U.S. in this aspect. Personally, I think there is no major problem for the U.S. electromagnetic catapult to catapult the F-35. The problem lies in deployment. For a carrier-based aircraft, we can not only look at its catapult weight. In fact, the main restriction that a catapult imposes on a carrier-based aircraft is not in terms of weight, but in terms of energy. If a carrier-based aircraft has a relatively heavy takeoff weight but a low takeoff speed, its weight is not a big issue. For example, during the Cold War, the U.S. Essex-class aircraft carrier catapulted the A-3 attack aircraft, which had a maximum takeoff weight of over 37 tons. The catapult on the U.S. Essex class is the first-generation U.S. catapult. Moreover, the catapult on the Essex class is shorter than those on the later U.S. Forrestal class and Kitty Hawk class. The Forrestal class is equipped with the C-11 catapult, the later Kitty Hawk class with the C-13, while the Essex class is equipped with the C-7. The catapult power of the Essex class is actually lower than that of the catapults on the later Forrestal class and Kitty Hawk class. However, it had no major problem catapulting the 37-ton A-3 attack aircraft. A very important reason for this is that the takeoff speed of the A-3 attack aircraft is much lower than that of supersonic fighter jets. This can also be seen in domestic papers, which state the maximum energy that a catapult can provide for catapulting. Therefore, as long as the product of the aircraft's weight and the square of its speed does not exceed the energy of the electromagnetic catapult, there will be no major problem in catapulting the carrier-based aircraft. So there is no need to be too hung up on this issue. Compared with the steam catapult, in addition to higher energy utilization, the electromagnetic catapult has another great advantage. Its energy can be adjusted, which means it can catapult aircraft with a much wider range of weights. For example, we can see that the U.S. electromagnetic catapult can catapult aircraft as light as 200 kilograms. Now we are looking forward to more developments. After all, so far, only the video of the Fujian's first carrier-based aircraft catapult operation has been released. We are now looking forward to seeing videos of it catapulting other carrier-based aircraft in the future. Obviously, to name just one example, the Attack 2-1 UAV showcased in the 93 military parade is significantly lighter than the several carrier-based aircraft catapulted by the Fujian this time, and it is an unmanned aircraft. We are looking forward to seeing whether videos of the Fujian catapulting the Attack 1-1 and smaller UAVs will be released in the future. For example, the 2 Loyal Wingman UAVs for situational awareness showcased in the 93 military parade are relatively light in weight, which is believed to be less than 10 tons. There may even be UAVs of lower weight classes in the future. We will wait and see if videos of the electromagnetic catapult being used for these UAVs will be released. As we all know, ships like the Type 076 will basically not carry manned aircraft. They are mainly designed for catapulting UAVs in the future. Besides the Attack 2-1, I believe there will be other types of UAVs on board, especially those for situational awareness. Moreover, we know about aircraft like the Shenyang Aircraft Corporation's J-50 and the newly revealed 6th-generation aircraft some time ago. It can be basically determined now that one of these two 6th-generation aircraft will be deployed on aircraft carriers in the future. It can be seen that the size of these two 6th-generation aircraft is larger than that of both the J-15 and J-35, so their weight will also be greater. We are also looking forward to seeing the Fujian catapult, our 6th-generation aircraft, for takeoff in the next few years. It can be basically determined that the successful catapult takeoff of our 6th-generation aircraft on an aircraft carrier will definitely be ahead of the US. It may even be that the time when our 6th-generation aircraft conducts catapult takeoff on an aircraft carrier is earlier than the time when the US conducts catapult takeoff of its 6th-generation aircraft on land. As we all know, the US is now fully focusing on the F-47 project, so its F divided by H-1X project has been delayed overall. It receives little funding each year, and this aircraft is unlikely to conduct its first test flight until after 2030, or even possibly after 2035. For our country's aircraft, whether it is the J-50 or the 6th-generation aircraft revealed some time ago, regardless of whether it is manned or unmanned, even if it is not put into service by 2035, it will need to undergo design finalization before that, which will inevitably involve conducting catapult takeoff tests on an aircraft carrier. Moreover, by 2035, if there are no unexpected circumstances, the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier being built by Dalian Shipyard should be completed. There is also a rumored conventional-powered aircraft carrier at Jiangnan Shipyard. In fact, before 2035, it is very likely that we will have 3 aircraft carriers equipped with electromagnetic catapults. At that time, we will have more flexibility in conducting various tests on carrier-based aircraft.